Hello everyone. In this lecture, we are going to solve two assignments. In the first one, we are going to consider the automated credit plus the savings market, in which there is no money market. And in the second one, we have automated credit, savings, and also the money market. The mindset of these two assignments is that there is a bank which gives some automated credit to the customers. The customers are willing to take automated credit. So that's why bank is actually generating revenues out of giving this credits to the customers. Whereas in savings part, the bank is having some savings and bank also is incurring some costs because of holding this savings. It also has to pay some interest rates and also have to incur some interest payments at some time frame. So the two assignments are really similar to each other. The only difference is that in the first one, we are not going to consider the money market. In money market, depending on the liquidity of the bank, whether bank needs some money or not, it also has some operations in the money market. It could go and just demand some money if it has no such enough money to give credits to the customers, or just actually distribute the money that is in the surplus. So depending on the occasion, the money market is needed. But in the first one, we are just going to consider that there will be no surplus or shortage of the money. But in the second one, we are going to consider the money market and solve the questions accordingly. So in the first step, we are going to see the assignment, and then we are going to solve it, and then we are going to show the graphics, and we are also going to talk about the asset and liability side and show the balance sheet. And the Excel solver at the end is going to help us to confirm the solutions that we have, whether they are correct or not on the Excel. So the assumptions that we have in the automated credit and savings is that we have two equations. The first one is the price of the automated credit is given as 15 minus 0.1 times A, whereas the price of the savings is given as 3 plus 0.1 times S. So A and S, the capital letters, are representing the volume for each these two operations. So in the first function of PA, it's also representing the demand side because it's downward sloping, and this is the demand of the customers for the automated credit. Whereas in the second one, in the PS, the savings are actually incurred by the bank. So that's why it is upward sloping, and we see that these two curves will also be presented graphically, and we are also going to show them. So the other assumption was that there will be no money market. The other thing that we have to say is the function of profit. It is given as revenues minus cost. So in here that we have to think of which part is generating revenues and which part is incurring cost for the bank. So PA, which is the demand side, is actually generating some revenues for the bank because bank is giving some credit to the customers, and it is generating revenues. But on the other side, the PS side, in this part, bank is actually incurring some payments because it has some savings, as we all have sometimes that we have savings in the bank and we have to pay some interest. So that bank is also incurring such things. So it is stated as the cost in this profit function. So the logic out of this function of generating profits is buying low and selling high. So bank is actually buying at low. I mean, the interest payments for the savings is actually lower, whereas the interest payments that customers are paying for the credits are higher. And because of this structure, bank is actually generating some profits. So the three main questions are stated as this. The first one is to solve the profit maximization problem. So to do this, we have to just write the profit function and just see which part is revenues and cost, and see which part is marginal revenue and marginal cost. So the other one is to understand how to maximize the profit problem. So it is not only solving it like just writing the profit function, we also have to think about the first order condition. We have to take the differentiation out of this function. And after this, we are going to just show these two functions on a graphic. And the last part is going to include the balance sheet in which the assets and liabilities will be well written. So the first one, as we said, it's going to be the profit function, and it's going to be the first derivative equal to 0. This is a necessary condition. To maximize the profit, we have to think about the differentiation, and we have to equalize it to 0. So out of this, we are going to end up with the optimal quantity, because this first derivative is always going to give the optimum point. And out of this optimal quantity, we are going to insert the quantity in the functions and then going to end up with the optimal interest rates in the both markets. So at the end, we are also going to get the size of the profit. So by combining the automated credit and savings, we can see that the profit function is given as the P times Q. And this is the mindset of the profit function. The revenue side is also given by P times Q, and the supply side is also, the cost side is also given as P times Q. As we could see, this part was a PA. So PA was 15 minus 0.1 times A, and times quantity. The quantity was given as A in here. The other part was the cost side. The price of S was given like this, as we have seen in the previous slide, times the quantity of the market, the S. So the subtraction of these two functions will give us the profit function. As we have said, we are just not considering money market. So we are assuming that under the A equals to S, the credit market, the volume of the credit market is going to be the same with the volume of the savings, we could actually insert A into S. And we end up with this function. And the next step was to take the derivative. So when we take the derivative, we end up with this function, and we have to equalize it at 0 as it was necessary condition. So the other important part in here that we could actually think of, which part is actually giving us the marginal revenue and which part is giving us the marginal cost. The mindset to get the profit is just getting a point where the marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost economically. So in here, we see that this part was the revenues generated by the bank, whereas this part was the cost. So while we are taking derivative, we are taking the marginal part of this function. So in here, we have 15 minus 0.2 times A. This is the marginal revenue. This was revenue, and when we take the first derivative of this function, we end up with this part. So this is the marginal revenue. And this part is the marginal cost, because this was the cost side. When we take the first derivative, we end up with the marginal cost, the cost that is incurred by just increasing or just by just producing one more quantity. So these two parts should actually be equal to each other. If we just take this part to the right hand side, we see that 3 plus 0.2 times A, the marginal cost side, is equal to the 15 minus 0 times 0.2 times A to the marginal revenue. So after realizing, after considering this, we could actually go on. The other part is actually simple. So if we just equalize this equation to 0, we end up with this A equals to 30. So the third part in which that we are ending up with the optimal quantity is done. So we have 30 in here, and if we just insert it into these two functions, as we said that A is equal to S, then we end up with PA equals to 12 and PS equals to 6. So the profit function at the end is given like this one. We have the revenue side, we have the cost side times the quantity, so the volume. So we have 6 times 30, which is 180 cents. So the profit is equal to 180 cents or 1.80 euros. So graphically we could show this. As you could see, these two uh, functions that we have already seen, the revenues and cost functions actually were also shown in this graphic, the demand and supply side. So the demand was given in the automotive credit and it is shown in this blue one. Demand side is always shown downward sloping. So you could see that this is given from the 15 to the 150. And you could also see that the slope is minus 0.1. So it is actually drawn in here. The supply side for the savings is also given with the orange curve. It is upward sloping and you could see that it starts from 3 and it also has the same slope. So the other two are actually the marginal revenues and marginal costs. We have said that marginal cost is upward sloping and it also starts from the 3 because we said that this was marginal cost side, 3 plus 0.28. So we have this starting from 3 and which has a slope of 0.2. The other one was the marginal revenues. It was actually given in the previous one. We have seen that 15 minus 0.2 times A. So this was the marginal revenue side and the function is also drawn in here. So the marginal revenue side is given with this gray curve. You could see that it starts from 15 and it also has a slope of minus 0.2 because it is given as minus and it's downward sloping. So marginal revenues and marginal costs are also given with the demand and supply side. When it comes to the balance sheet in year T0, we have seen that we had a quantity of 30 in the automated credit and it was A. And in the saving deposit, we have said that we are assuming that savings and automated credit have the same volume. So that's why it's also stated in here as 30. The thing that we have to consider is that automated credit is stated as long-term assets, and it was already given that it's 12%. We have actually found this. We have found that the interest rate was 12%. So the 6% was coming out of here. So when we wrote in here, we could see that which one is long-term and which one is short-term liabilities. So the automated credit is stated as long-term assets, whereas the saving deposit is stated as the short-term liabilities. So the two parts should be equal to each other, the assets and the liabilities, and plus the equity. The right-hand side and the left-hand side should be equal to each other. Since we have only long-term assets, which is given as automated credit, and the other side, we only have the short-term liabilities, we could say that the two parts equalize each other. So this is given in T equals to 0. But in expected balance sheet in year T equals to 1, we have seen that the profit was given as 180 cents. We have solved this, so it is now here. So it is equal to 1.8 euros, and it is stated as cash in here. In T1, we are expecting some profit, and it is stated under short-term assets and under cash. So when we actually sum this up, we end up with 31.8. And the liability side is also equal to this value because we had saving deposits and we also have equity. The 1.80, which is given as cash and profit out of the solution of this assignment, we're saying that this has to be This has to be stated under the equity. So the two sides are again equal to each other. The next step, which is actually the Excel solver, which is just confirming your result. This is done in Excel, and you have to just use the Excel solver to state that the objective function should be maximized. So in here, the thing is that you have to know the quantity we have found was actually changeable. So in this part, you have to know that there should be quantity, the interest rate of the automotive, interest rate of the savings, revenues, costs, and profit. When you just write down all those variables in here and the functions in here, you could actually confirm your results. The mindset under that is if you just say, let's say 10 for the quant automotive, then you know these functions for the demand and supply side. Depending on 10, this is changeable cell, whether you write 5 or 15, the functions are going to give you some different results. And then at the end, you are going to have a profit. But when you go and just solve the Excel solver and just say that you are trying to maximize in here by selecting the changeable cell as D5, then you are going to end up with exactly 180 cents. We are going to show this for the second part, for the second assignment, but this was just for verbally. And now we are in the second part. So in the second part, it's also really similar. The steps are always similar when we are just trying to maximize the profit in these assignments. The only difference is that we are considering the money market in here. So we already had automated credit market, the saving market, as well as the money market. So, but the money market was not considered in the first assignment because we said that the volume of automated credit and the savings was assumed to be equal to each other. But now we are considering the money market. So we already have these two functions for the automated credit and the saving market. And now in the money market, we have an interest rate of 5. So depending on the situation that bank faces, whether it needs liquidity or not, the right hand side, PM times M, is going to be added or subtracted from the profit function. Now we do not know whether A is equal to S, greater or less than or equal to S. So we do not know this equalization, whether it is bigger or just lower than S. So that's why we are just considering whether the bank supplies or demands the liquidity is not actually given. We actually do not know this because we do not know the situation. Depending on the situation, we are going to write the sign plus or minus. So let's define M as equal to A minus S in here. If this is the case, then it means that A is greater than S. So if it is the case, then M is greater than 0. So that liquidity is demanded at the money market. That means that the credits demanded by the customers are actually greater than the savings of the bank. Bank needs some money, so it should go and just require to get some liquidity in the money market, but it is also a cost for the bank because it is also borrowing. It is not lending in the money market because it needs some money. That's why we are just putting minus in front of this part, the right hand side. So PM times A minus S. It is A minus S because we have stated as M equals A minus S, and it is trying to actually fulfill the shortage. So now we have this equation and we are again putting these functions in order. And then when we get rid of the brackets, then we end up with the 10th equation. So we now have to take the first derivatives, the first order conditions. We know that we have done this in the previous one, but in here we have to consider that A is not equal to S as we have stated. So in here, when we take the first derivative with respect to A, we also have to take respect to S because they are not equal now. So with respect to A, we end up with A equals to 50. And with respect to S, we end up with the volume of S equals to 10. So we actually concluded this part as well. We have found the volumes for each market. In first one, we have 50. In the second one, the savings, we have 10. So in the money market, we have A minus S, which we defined in the previous slide, and this is given as 40. So 40 is actually needed by the banks. This is the shortage that bank is facing because the credit is greater than the savings part. So 40 is required by the bank in the money market. So it is borrowing that amount in the money market. So when we just insert these volumes into the two functions, and we end up with the price of A as 10, whereas the price of savings is equal to 4. So the profit at the end was given with this function, and when we add them all up, we end up with 260. So now the profit is equal to 260 or 2.6 euros, which is greater than the previous one. So this is again another part, the part where the confirmation of the result could be seen in the Excel. So this is again the same logic that I have just said. You have a choice of just writing down some values which could be changeable. You could just say that 20 or just 10 for the quantity automative or just 5 for the saving deposits. And when we just have these profit functions and the demand and supply functions, we are automatically ending up with the profit at the very last part. So in again Excel solver, we have to solve the optimum point where the profit is maximized, and the solution should be the same what we have found in the previous one, 260. If we just end up with this, then it means that we have solved it correctly. So in the balance sheet side, we could see that the year T equals to 0 is given as a 50 for the assets and the liabilities, because we have found that automotive credit was given as 50. So the only part that we're considering, the 50, is the long-term assets, automotive credit, because the volume of A was 50. But on the right-hand side, we do not see a strict 50. We just see two values that adds up to 50 and equalizes to each other. Under the short-term liabilities, we have two components that we have considered in this question, which was saving deposits and the money market. In saving deposits, which had an interest rate of 4, as we have found, adds up with 10 volumes of savings. So in the money market, we said that there was a shortage, about 40, that we have found it after the assignment. Then when we add them up, we end up with 50. So it means that the balance sheet is equalized. It is actually on balance, of course. So in expected balance sheet in year T equals 1, we could see that there is some changes in the balance sheet. As in the year T1, we are expecting some profits, as we have also generated under the problem that we have solved. The cash equals to 2.6 euros now. So in T1, we are expecting some profits, and it is wrote under the cash for the asset side. Whereas this value is again written under the equity side, as it was already solved in the same manner in the first assignment. So now we again see that 52.6 is actually the same for both assets and liabilities plus equity side. So two sides, as we have seen, equalizes to each other. So now the thing that I want to show is the logic of this solver, Excel solver. As we have said, the quantity automative and saving deposits could actually change. These are changeable cells. So PA was given like this one. So we could say that 15 minus 0.1 times 5, then we have 13. For the savings, we have 3 plus 0.1 times these 6. So the revenues is given with the 8 times the 5. Now we have the cost. The cost side is D9, that is stated, D6 plus 5 times 7. So the profit in here is given as this one. Now we have 170. So the mindset in here is that you are just writing some values which is just the things that you want to write, and I just give 20 and 10 in here, and based on the functions on the quantity money market and interest rate automated and savings, we end up with these values. So these were in these stated in here, but of course in here I'm in H, and the function is replicated depending on the values in here. So just to solve whether we could end up with the same value that we have found in the solution for the second assignment, we are going to solve with the Excel solver. And under data, we have Excel solver, and our aim is to maximize it. So we are maximizing this value, the profit. So, and this is maximize, and the values that could be changeable in this part should be written. So this part is these two values. As we said, these are changeable. So when we have written this, we are just solving it and then ending up with these values. So we are actually seeing that we have solved the question in the right manner. So the solutions are exactly the same. We had 50 volume of automotive credits, and this is the same. And we should also round up to the next level. So if this is 9.99, this is 10. And if this is 3.99, this is 4. So the values are exactly the same that we have found in the solution. So this is actually the confirmation for the solutions that you have found in the questions. This was the end of this lecture. Thanks.